Hello, my name is Hanna from HERBGARDEN knitwear, and today I have a special guest on my couch. This is Frauke Urban from Urban Yarning, and Frauke and I, we have been working together for about 3 years now. We have become friends along the way, and today we're here to talk about technical editing. So do you maybe want to introduce yourself, Frauke?
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me here.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
Hi for me too. Yes, so my name is Frauke Urban. That's why it's Urban Yarning. My surname is just too good to not use in my business name. I'm a technical editor for mainly knitting patterns, but Hanna just asked me before we started if I do other things as well, and there was the odd crochet pattern, and there was 1 or 2 sewing patterns as well. So, but I don't offer that officially.
So if you want to hire Frauke, then you can mainly ask for knit and crochet patterns. How did you come to be a technical editor?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's not an official job, so you can't do an apprenticeship or study for it or something like that. And I always toyed with the thought of becoming an editor, but so maybe I should start at the beginning with my formal education.
Yes.
So I have quite some points on my CV, and they're all quite useful. So I learned to become a gardener after school, and then I studied horticulture, and after that I did my doctoral thesis in agriculture, the area of plant breeding. And
so I have to correct myself, this is not Frauke Urban, this is Dr. Frauke Urban.
Yes, I don't hide it, but I don't lead with it either. So I'm still interested in that area, and there are interesting jobs there, but I didn't really find my niche there.
Okay.
And because I'm very good at spotting errors and mistakes in patterns,
which so I can confirm she is.
So not just patterns as in knitting patterns, but in the written word or everything I can see, and I see. I can't stop seeing it. Sometimes it's a bit annoying, and I don't know what the lady has to say about my files I left her in my old job, because if I had to read reports, and I often had to, I had always my pencil in my hand, and I couldn't stop myself from marking all errors.
So you seem like to be a natural born tech editor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I looked into becoming maybe a scientific editor, but at that point in my career I was not the youngest anymore, so not old, but it was almost 10 years in my formal education and working experience, and I would have to do an unpaid internship, and I wasn't prepared to go back to that, especially as most scientific publishing houses in my area are in the south of Germany. Okay. Where living expenses are very high.
Yeah, that's true.
So it didn't fit together, and I was always a knitter. So I started 30 years ago. my anniversary this year.
Congratulations!
30th, so it's quite some time.
That's quite some time.
So I'm an experienced knitter, and I have seen a lot of patterns from that perspective too, which I think is important as a background. And so I started reading different blogs. And I came upon designers' blogs as well, and so I saw tech editing mentioned, and I did a bit of research, and I thought that's something I could do, because the editing comes naturally to me, and doing it for knitting is just more interesting to me.
Understand.
So I thought, how do you go about becoming a knitting tech editor? And I was prepared to contact one I knew from my blog reading days. But before it came to that, there was a row of interesting coincidences. So my last job was in a funding agency. I was there to read research proposals and decide if they get funding or not. And you should think that's an interesting job, and that the proposals are interesting and new, but they weren't.
Okay.
So it was very boring, and so I wanted a change in my life, and so I decided to quit my job and move to Bremen, where we are both living. I hope it's okay that I said that.
It's a rather large city in northern Germany.
Yes. Not long after my move, a special program started for women who want to start a business. And I got lucky and was selected to take part. And my first idea was to open a yarn store, but it didn't work out. And it was summer break then in our seminar. And I was... there was nothing, I had no idea what to do and how to continue, because my idea wouldn't work out. I knew that at that point. But the tech editing idea was still in the back of my head. And so I toyed with the idea to contact the tech editor I knew. And but then I saw a advertisement for a course for tech editors. And it would start just after our seminar, the business starting seminar would stop, and it would end in time for me to apply for funding to start my own business. So the timing was perfect. And so
as if it was meant to be.
Yes. So I hopped on it, and from the first homework we got, it was clear that I could do it. And actually, I was quite sure I could do it, but that was... I needed the proof that it's okay, and it was. And so I started my business as a tech editor in 2018. So in summer it will be 5 years that I'm working as a tech editor.
Another anniversary! Congratulations!
It's quite a year.
Yeah. You kind of decided after you were so unhappy with your job to just dip your toe into tech editing, and of course as it is for all of us when starting something new, something that we have never done before, it is usually something you have to ease into, kind of, yeah? You have to like kind of just, or you just have to make a jump and...
Yes, I jumped.
Yeah, okay. Okay, but ultimately you just made your superpower in finding mistakes and other people's writing to your, the job that actually pays for your living, right?
Yes.
So, and I believe we have worked together for about 25 patterns, about...
It's 24.
24,
I checked before I came here.
Yeah, nice. So I was just estimating. So we have been working together for 25 patterns, and I have to say that if you have been watching this channel for a while, you already know that I would not dare to publish a sweater pattern without giving it to Frauke first. So yeah, so maybe I've made the experience on this channel that for many people it is not quite clear what a tech editor does. So maybe could you just sum it up a little bit what you do in your daily work?
Yes, of course. So basically I check for everything in your pattern. Mm-hmm. So I check the text, the wording, mm-hmm. and the numbers. Mm-hmm. Especially important.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it is.
And I check if the instructions would work out to get you to the same point as Hanna, so that you have a beautiful sweater like the Reyna Sweater here.
Yeah, thank you.
But I never knit the pattern.
Yeah,
that's true. I think that's important to say, because if I talk to people who don't have any idea what it is I'm doing, they say, okay, so you're knitting the whole day. That's right up your street. And I say, yeah, it would be, but that's not what I do. I'm knitting in my head, maybe, but I don't knit the patterns. Yeah. I might do afterwards when I like something, but it doesn't mean that I don't like your pattern if I don't knit it.
No, that's
important.
Yeah, maybe that's good to mention, because maybe we could talk about expectations. So I often get asked as a designer why I have my patterns both tech edited and test knit, because I feel that the difference between the two of these things is not always clear. So when you get asked if you knit the patterns that you are editing, that's kind of going into the same direction. Mm-hmm. Because when I give you a pattern, it obviously has several sizes, so it would be impossible for you to knit every of these sizes. So maybe we could chat a little bit about what the difference between tech editing and tech knitting is. So maybe first tell us a little bit more about what you do with a pattern and what do you check when I give it to you or any other designer gives it to you.
Actually, I check everything.
I can confirm that.
I am very detail orientated, and I think that's why I don't hide my doctorate, because I worked in academia for several years, and in hard science, like we say, and actually my doctoral thesis was a mix of plant breeding theory and statistics. Mm-hmm. And I had made up models to see to make my data fit with the models we had in plant breeding. So I have that background too.
So you also have like a mathematical background a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which of course makes sense, because when a designer gives you a pattern, what you also do is like you check all the numbers.
Yes, every number there is.
And also if like the stitch and the row counts really result into a certain size, right?
Yes. So to break that down a bit maybe, and I think that's an important distinction between tech editing and test knitting. I don't just check your style and your adherence to your style guide, and that your layout looks the same as the last time, and that you have no spelling or grammar errors, or that the wording is clear and understandable. I check all these things, but that's not all I do. I check all the numbers, and you might have the impression that I didn't do much with your pattern because you don't have many comments. But that didn't mean that I didn't spend time on it and checked everything. First of all, I look at all the sizes. One person looks at all the sizes. I check all increases and decreases, if the numbers are correct. And then I will check at the different points if the stitch count will result in the measurement given for that size.
Yes, and if I'm correct, you not only check if the stitch counts and row counts result in the measurement given in the schematic. So usually in a pattern you have like this little drawing or something that indicates what measurement a size has. For example, like a bust circumference for a sweater and an upper arm circumference. And you not only check that the stitch counts really result in like the given measurements, but also if those measurements together make sense. Like, does this upper arm circumference actually make sense for this bust circumference? So like if the garment is in itself like logical, right?
Yes. And in the back of my mind, I always check against standard measurements. So we will come to that a bit later, the grading. So you use the standard measurements for grading, and I will always keep in mind to check if that fits together, the measurements you have with the standard sizing you are given. No one of us is standard size, but we have to start at one point.
Yes.
So that's what I won't go and put two charts together and really compare the sizes, but I have done this for 5 years now, and I checked 350 patterns, published patterns, so there are some not published yet. And so I spot quite quickly if something wouldn't fit, and that means wouldn't fit a person too.
So maybe that's another thing that is important to make the difference between tech editing and test knitting, because for me as a designer, it is important that the pattern that I put out to be test knit, that this pattern has as little errors and as little things for the test knitters to find as possible. So Frauke is my way to achieve that. So I do not want the test knitters to discover that all the stitch counts, for example, work perfectly fine, but the shoulder width is just way too wide or way too short. That's not something that a test knitter should find out for me, in my opinion.
Yes, especially as almost nobody of us is able to pay test knitters with money. So the pattern is a reward for test knitting as well, and so you should come out with a garment that fits.
Yes, that's true.
Otherwise, it would be very difficult to find test knitters otherwise. I think you would find some for your first pattern, but
yeah, that's true. So you might have, if testers once make the experience that they get a pattern from you that does not work at all and requires them to do a lot of work, then I don't believe, just like you said, like they would do it only one time. So as so maybe we can talk a little bit about why it still makes sense to have the pattern test knit, because I feel like these are two things that really complement each other. So I feel like when I give my pattern to Frauke, then I know when the tag editing process is done, and we talk about this process a little bit later in this video, then if it's done, then I know I have a pattern that has most likely no major issues in it at all. There might be some tiny things, but usually it is ready to be published as it is. So why do I have it test knit? Because I feel that it is good to know if the instructions I wrote really are understandable in a way like we both think, like we both have a lot of knitting experience. Like you said, 30 years. I have not as many years experience, but still we have made a lot of patterns ourselves. So it would be very good to know for me if my pattern can also be understood by a very beginner knitter. And the second thing that I find very important is that I want to see my item on different body types, and it is one thing if the measurements fit to the sizing charts as we just talked about, but the other thing is, like, does it really look as I envisioned the design to be? So I feel like those things really walk hand in hand. I have the pattern tag edited, it will be in perfect condition. I will hopefully not get a lot of inquiries about it during the test knit nor after the test knit. That is also something that I find very important, and one thing why I would always choose to work with a tag editor, because when a pattern is out there in the world, there will be people knitting it, hopefully at least, and I obviously don't want to spend every day just answering emails about wrong patterns. That would be like a disaster for me. So yeah, so I think those both things really help designers to put out good quality patterns. One other thing that you already mentioned that we might talk about a little bit is there's this process called grading. And what that basically means is that a person takes a design and calculates this design into all the sizes that are supposed to be in the pattern. So usually, as you know, in my patterns I have at least 10 sizes for garments, and of course neither Frauke nor me is sitting at home knitting all those 10 sizes. That would be absolutely impossible to do, and it would also be like financially impossible to do that.
Yes.
So there still needs to be a process to get all those sizes that are in the pattern from the one sample that I usually make. And this process is called grading. And I often get asked if tag editors also do grading. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit.
The answer is yes, some do, but no good grader or tag editor or both should do both on one pattern. So I think we all are used to giving everything right to at least one other person. If it's a parent or a sibling or a friend, if it's important. So a thesis or an application for a job, and I was the go-to person, I am the go-to person for those in my family and friendship groups. So we should get used to the thought that that's something we just do. So the editing process we should normalize that and do it for everything we put out, especially if we want to get money for that. And and that's the reason why I don't do grading at the moment. I don't offer that service. I might in the future, but I don't do at the moment. So it's not a question in my case, but there are people who do both, and they shouldn't do both. They shouldn't both wear both hats for one job, because you can do the one, and then you need another person to check your work, because you can't guarantee to not make mistakes. And I have a few designs out there too, and I gave those to a tech editor as well.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting, because I feel that's the exact same that I would do. I have talked to some fellow designers, and I often have had the impression that they felt if they have worked with a tech editor like once or twice, then they do have a common sense about what information should be in a pattern, how it should be constructed, like the general setup of a pattern. And they felt like now that they know how this works, they do not longer need to work with a technical editor, which we would both not agree with, right? Because whenever a person puts out a text, and it does not even need to be a knitting pattern, it could be anything else, like just what you said, like a thesis for your university studies or something like that, you would always give it to somebody else for proofreading, right? Because we all make mistakes, and somehow we are all completely blind to the mistakes that we make ourselves.
Yes, and I can't type merino for the life of me.
We all have, like, if you think about it, I'm very sure you will find some words that you know you always spell wrong. Like, we all have them. So, what we are trying to say is, like, if you have a tech editor and you want that this person also grades the pattern, then hopefully every tech editor that you ask will decline to do that for you, because as soon as one person does this whole grading process, and I have shared like short videos of my spreadsheets on Instagram, and you have no idea how big these spreadsheets get. It is almost impossible to do this without making a single mistake. It's a very, very long process. It always takes me, I don't know, several days to do that. So you should always go and find somebody else to proof check this. And as Frauke just said, whenever she publishes a pattern, which she also does, you have it tech edited by someone else, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's important to have everything checked by another person. And yes, it takes more time and especially more money. But so grading isn't easy, but it isn't magic either.
No.
So you can learn that. But if you don't want to do it or don't feel safe enough in your knowledge about it, you can outsource it, but keep in mind that you need 2 persons then. And you mentioned that fellow designers think after they experience the services of a tech editor for a few times that they know what it's all about, and then they think they can do without. Obviously, I will tell you that I don't agree, but I don't just not agree because I earn my money that way.
Maybe it's for me to make this argument because I'm actually paying you, right? So I can confirm, as we said, I have been working together with Frauke for 24 patterns, and still I always do something that is not right. So she always finds something after all these years and after all this time of working together. There are still things I need to correct, and Frauke finds them every time.
Some of my colleagues have a niche. So they say, I only edit garments. Or I do everything but no socks, please no socks. I don't do that. I do every pattern, every kind of pattern you could come up with. I had shawls, I had hats, I had mittens, I had every kind of garment, I had blankets, everything. So that's not something I would define as my niche, but I want to work with people who take their job seriously and act professionally.
So maybe to make this a little easier to understand, could you define some things that a pattern that is given to you for tag editing should already have? Like what should be included when the pattern as itself is ready to be tag edited and to be sent to you?
Yes. So it's different what I get from different people. So even the file format is different. So some people give me their pattern in the final layout as a PDF, and I will annotate that. Other people give me just the text as a Word or Pages file, and I can work on that. Obviously, I track all changes. You will always see what I do. I won't change anything without letting you know that I changed anything. Or if you decide to send me a document in which I can work too.
Maybe to make this a little more clear, so you would always just add notes, but you add feedback in form from notes, and then it is the task of the designer to put these notes into to use that feedback, or do you actually also change?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends with whom I'm working, and so I work with a very, very experienced designer, and I did over 100 patterns with them at this time, and they let me change stuff. Okay. So I don't know how much you know about style guides or style sheets. So, but before you publish a pattern, even if it's your first, you should decide how you want it to look. And you can put it in a document, so you can refer back to it, and other people can too. So, for example, me. I'm always happy to work with a pattern you already published to compare, but you will have a style and certain guidelines your pattern should adhere to, and I will check if it fits. Yeah. And so some people let me do these changes. Okay. Because I can, and if I work in a document I can change, I would make all changes myself that I can without asking. Okay. Because if there's just a typo,
yeah, of course,
or something like that, I can change that. If there's a full stop instead of a semicolon, according to your style guide, I can change that. You will always see that I did it because I track changes, but I would do that myself. Other things I can't decide. Or I won't do for you. So,
for example, like more complex rephrasing, for example.
That's one example, but I checked your numbers, as I said several times, and if they don't add up or match, or if one size is just not working, then I put a comment, and mostly I will put my calculations, if I think that would help you, in there too. And then I would ask you to check it again.
And aside from the format style, which you already talked about, are there like content parts that aren't absolutely necessary?
I want all sizes, all numbers for all sizes. I won't start the editing process before you finished grading or somebody else finished grading. At least one photo, it can be a progress shot, is nice to have. I don't need the schematic at the beginning, but I want all finished measurements. And obviously all instructions, because I have to check them. If you put in charts, I want the chart, and if you give both a chart and written instructions, I want them both, because I will compare them against each other. Line for line, actually, so that will take some time. Maybe
to talk a little bit of my experience, I always felt, because I know from other designers that is a little bit of a fear point when thinking about talking working with a tag editor, that they are afraid of criticism, I guess, a little bit. But I feel while we have been working together, that has never been the case. You always just kindly mark whatever mistake I have made. Like, it can be sometimes you look back at your own things and think, how did that even happen? But Frauke always kindly just marks it and just suggests another solution for this, and I have never felt criticized in any way. It is always, for me, it is always very constructive feedback. Just maybe to say that, because yeah, thank you so much for saying that, because that's my goal. I'm with you. I see designer and editor as a team. We work together to make a great pattern, and I'm not an enemy. No, not at all. You're an ally. Yes, I don't want you to be afraid. I want to help you, and it's never, even if I have to comment on a lot of things, it doesn't mean you are a bad designer or a bad writer, or it's not it's no judgment at all. Exactly. Yeah. Judgment was the word I was looking for. I don't judge you for anything. I have experience working with the tag editor as well, and I know how you feel, and I make mistakes, silly mistakes too. We all do. And so I know exactly how it is, and you don't need to be afraid. No. In the end, everything is your decision. Yeah. You can get 100 comments and you can say, okay, that one about the spacing there, I will keep in mind, and I will follow her suggestion there. But everything else I don't see, and so I won't do it. Yeah, and often we also have like the opportunity to just talk. You know,
Yes.
you read what I have written, and you let me know that in your head it made something up. As you thought about it in a different way than I had intended, and then we can just chat about it and let's first establish a basis about what I actually wanted to say, and
Yes.
then we can try to find a solution together. So it's really like working hand in hand.
Yes, and I might be wrong too.
Rarely.
Sometimes,
Rarely.
but sometimes I don't understand correctly, but that's a good point as well, because you want the knitter to understand without having to contact you.
Yes.
Because, as Hanna explained before, pattern support can be
Time
a
consuming.
pain in the
Yeah.
you know what, and so you don't want that. And it's a good thing if I'm a bit stupid sometimes and just don't understand, because then you could maybe change wording at those places
Oh.
to make it clearer.
Maybe we can dive a little bit into the process, because what we do is not like I give Frauke the pattern and she gives me feedback and that was it. No, it's just, it goes back and forth, right?
Yes.
So I give you a pattern, you give feedback, and then I read your feedback and try to incorporate it in the new version of the pattern. And so we go back and forth until we both feel like now we have nothing left to change, right?
Yes.
And that would be, for me, the point where I give it to my test knitters, the pattern.
Yes. And then after testing, I will check it again.
Yes.
If you made changes according to the feedback you got from your testers, or if you didn't, it's usually there's a time, sometime between
Yes.
those points, and so it's good to just read it again, and you will spot some minor things you didn't spot before. So that's all included in my rates. The last check, which is a proofreading. I won't check your numbers again at that time point. So
unless, for example,
yes,
I told you like
yes.
we had issues with size number 8. Like if I tell you, then you would of course check it again.
Yes, but I would do that during the testing phase as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm your tag editor, you can contact me at any point in the whole process, even if when you're just writing the pattern before I get the first
Draft.
finished version, or the first draft is a better word. You can contact me. I'm always happy to chat about knitting, and so sometimes it helps to talk to another person about that, and I'm available for that if I'm your tag editor.
Yeah, it's good.
It doesn't cost extra, but I have to be your tag editor in some capacity before.
So maybe if someone would watches this video and thinks about hiring you, do you take new designers, and
Yes.
do you also work with beginner knitters?
Yes. So yes, I have space for more designers, and yes, I work with designers of all experience levels. I like working with newer designers. I think it's especially important at that point in your career as a designer to work with the tag editor, actually, because we can work on your style, on your layout, because all these things play a role in how well your pattern is received afterwards. You won't notice it at once, but people keep in mind if you have an not too clear wording style.
So you also, when a beginner designer is working with you, you would not only offer all the services that you usually do with every designer, but you also would help them establish their style, their layout, their way of writing a pattern.
Yes, I would comment on it in any case, and you can decide what you do with that. You don't have to follow my lead, but I mentioned that I am a very experienced knitter. I saw a lot of patterns, not just for editing, but for knitting too. And I have a list of designers I won't buy patterns from again as a knitter.
I believe most knitters have, right?
Yes, I think I'm not alone in that. And I want a clearly laid out pattern. It's a part that's important for the quality of your pattern. And you might not want to buy a pattern because it looks so nice, but the opposite is true. You won't buy a pattern if it doesn't look good.
Yeah. This is something you only notice when it's badly done, right?
Yes.
So. Yeah.
And the same for lots of errors in your patterns. People will buy one pattern, but then they might avoid buying more patterns. And so you can destroy a lot at the beginning of your career.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I like to work with people taking themselves and their work seriously.
Maybe that's a good point to go to another topic, because I believe my memory card is slowly running out of space.
We're talking for quite some time.
So maybe, do you feel comfortable mentioning a few designers you have worked with in the past, or the projects you have worked on in the past?
Yes, it should be clear that Hanna and I work together. People you might know, one, and I have to say I am proud of that. I work with Kate Davis, and she started working with me almost at my beginning, so in 2018. I work with other experienced designers. You might know Jill Walcott or Felicity Ford. And I work with newer but very well-known designers like Laura Penrose. It's quite a group of designers, and the last big project I worked on was Kate Davis's last club. The last pattern came out today, and I will check the draft of the book tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of something you might want to know if you consider working with me. You would contact me.
And I will put Frauke's website down in the description box so you can find it.
Yeah. And you don't need a long lead-up time when working with me. So I will schedule your pattern when it's in my inbox, not beforehand. You would contact me. I would tell you when I would have time to work with me and talk a bit about conditions and stuff like that. And at the moment, it's my workload looks like that I would be able to start working on your pattern in 3 to 5 working days after I received it. It's not the same for the later rounds of editing. So Hanna mentioned before we would go back and forth in several rounds until we both are happy, and that might get done quicker because it will take less time, so I can put it at the end of a day if it arrives in the morning, something like that. Yes, and if you decide to work with me, when you got all the information, then we would go through the process, like Hanna and I talked about before.
So if you are interested in working with Frauke, you will also find some information on her website. As I said, I will link it below, about her rates. And you could also always, as I did many years, 3 years ago, as I did myself, you could always just send Frauke a message. She's always very kind and responds very quickly to your messages, to just let her know what you are planning to do, and she will just give you an idea on how much that would be. And as she just said, you don't have to send her like a question in advance. You just can send her the pattern that you want to be edited. This is what I did many years ago. I just sent her my pattern and I just asked, how much would that be? Would you be willing to take that work on? And then we just came to an agreement, I guess.
Yes, and I think that's different between me and other editors. I have fixed minimum rates. For accessories. That's €60 plus VAT, if applicable, and €100 plus VAT if applicable for garments. And most of the time that buys you enough time for everything. So I don't think you had to pay more than that for any of your patterns. But if I need more time, then my hourly rate of €35 per hour applies. And yeah, so most people don't work with those rates, but it works best for me, and I think it's fair to you as well, because you get a lot for that. So not just the editing, but the access to me, to ask me anything at any time too, and
you also kind of get a colleague. So when you are working as a designer, you usually work only by yourself, right? You don't have like an office to go to in most cases. So it's just nice to have somebody in your field you can chat with, and if you have like thoughts, sometimes it's just good to talk to somebody. And Frauke, in my experience, Frauke has always been there if I had anything to talk about. So I think I see like we have to start quickly. So thank you very much for spending your time with us. We really hope this video was helpful to you. If you have any questions for me or Frauke, please feel free to just drop them in the comments below. I will forward them to Frauke and give them her answer back to you. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you much for being here, Frauke. And
thanks again for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me. I hope I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.